All right, so we, of course, have been listening to Joe Biden deliver the 2024 State of the Union. We've pulled a few of the most notable
quotables
moments,
yeah.
I guess we would say. Ryan has joined us at the table now, and since we havenn't heard from you yet, Ryan.
Asleep.
I was like, yeah. Chilling.
I'm jealous.
Kyle's brunette again.
Yeah.
In any case, what were your sort of top line takeaways? Do you think he met the moment?
I mean, I'm so sick of these things.
Yeah.
The whole country feels you on
Right?
that.
I mean, okay, so he looked like less old than he normally looks.
True.
For a while.
A bit.
Yeah,
Right.
for a bit.
Sort of flag there at the end,
yes.
but
But it's like,
yes.
okay, good. And the press is going to talk about that for a couple days, but it's like, so what? So he looked less old than he normally looks, like on one night. The American people are not stupid. Like they know 90% of them thought he was too old before the speech. 90% of them still think he's too old and think that he like gave a decent speech and was like hopped up on the right stuff.
Yeah.
And wait another day and there's going to be another video clip of him looking just insanely too old. So just if we're going to do the optics horse race part of it,
Yeah.
I think everybody on CNN and MSNBC was going to be talking about how great a job that he did at delivering sentences off of the teleprompter,
Yes.
are missing the fact that the American people are not idiots.
Larry
what do you think,
Sabato
Emily?
already said it was a, quote, home run.
Right.
It's going to get good reviews with
Yeah.
sort of
But you're down by 30 runs and it's the ninth inning.
And he
So-
tweeted, so Larry Sabato said that about halfway through the speech. And I actually think that's an important kind of dividing line. It did seem, Donald Trump tweeted that the meds were wearing off. That's an actual Trump Truth Social post. It did, though, seem like Joe Biden, as he got more comfortable behind the podium, was trying to mix it up as you had sort of Marjorie Taylor Greene and other Freedom Caucus people yelling back at him. He had some exchanges that, if he weren't as old as he is, might have gone better for him. But it was horrible. I mean, it was like he had built up this momentum and then he lost it because he spent his capital like trying to go back and forth with Marjorie Taylor Greene. And actually the perfect symbol of that is Marjorie Taylor Greene gave him the Lake and Riley button. That's the name of the girl who was killed in Georgia recently. And Biden had it on the podium with him. And then he said her name wrong, and he had his name right in front of him.
There were crazy coughs and other things.
And then he did
started to happen
illegal. Then he
around
said
him.
illegal.
He
which
Yeah, I
called
is
was
her
like-
actually.
illegal.
I mean, that
Or
was
he called him
noteworthy.
illegal.
Well-
That was probably politically astute.
Okay,
but,
so
yeah.
I did see Jonathan Martin made a good point on Twitter. He was like, imagine watching the Democratic debates in 2019 and the way that the entire party, including Joe Biden, was talking about immigration, and then hearing him in the
Yes.
State of the Union say, not even illegal immigrant, an illegal.
And illegal, right?
It's
That's a
it's been against the
Trumpian-esque.
AP style
otherwise-
guns since
Yeah.
2013.
But
There you go.
otherwise,
That's
it
my
was.
point.
But otherwise, that part was actually pretty pro-immigration and general. It was just that one rhetorical slip.
Go ahead,
It's so,
Krystal.
I mean, I
Or
just think
use.
that first of all, I think the policy on immigration and the like, hey, Donald Trump, we want to argue to the American people that you're literally a fascist on the border, but also why don't you work with me on implementing your fascism at the border is
Right.
a
No, the border stuff.
foolish,
Yeah, I mean, separate.
foolish,
Yeah.
insane strategy. And I think the foolishness of that strategy was reflected in that moment, where he's trying to, on the one hand, act like he's as much of a hard ass as the Republicans, like, I will be just as cruel at the border as you are. And on the other hand, still trying to do the liberal, like, but we want to welcome everyone.
Right, yes.
Agreed.
It doesn't make any freaking sense. And then when he goes off the prompter and does this trying to mix it up, first of all, it's a hot mess on every level, right? You're holding your breath the whole time, like, oh, where is
hard
this
to watch.
going? It is hard to watch because you know he's going off the rails. It doesn't really totally make sense. He's using the wrong name. He's using this sort of like, antiquated pejorative that is completely verboten, left of
libs,
center.
yes.
Yeah, and so it's a mess. But I mean, listen, if this was Obama delivering this speech at this level tonight, everyone would be going, that was an utter catastrophe. Like,
That's a good point.
there's something wrong with Barack
Yeah, you're
Obama.
right.
What has happened to him? Because it's Joe Biden. Like, yes, the CNN people are going to make him sound like he was amazing and it was perfect and it was like FDR and Reagan and whoever rolled up into one. But he did do better than the expectations that were set for him.
Yes.
And I think for him tonight, that was all he really needed to do when we're just talking about the horse race and the optics.
Let me zoom out a little bit just from the structure of the speech, because we kind of skipped ahead to immigration. And I actually think it's a key point is I actually have a time code here in front of me. So Biden began speaking somewhere between like 9:15, 9:25. He did not mention immigration until 10:08 p.m. And that was well within some 45, 50 minutes into the speech. The vast majority of the people who watched the State of the Union only watched the first 15 to 30 minutes. So the construction of the speech was basically to front load the issues where he has the best approval rating on, from Ukraine to the economy, a lot of the
Then
drug
IVF.
pricing stuff. Yeah, that's right. So I actually have the list in front of me. It was Ukraine, January 6th, IVF, Roe versus Wade, making fun of Republicans for cheering on infrastructure money, then drug price,
That was
then
a good
student
moment,
loans,
actually. That was a
good moment.
then tax cuts for the rich, then immigration, right? So now we're at 10 p.m. We're well past the time where a lot of folks have turned the television off, and then Israel comes after that. So he saved, and we've consistent polling we've reflected here on our Tuesday show. The number one issue that Biden is underwater, immigration. Number two is Gaza. Ukraine somehow, don't ask me why, people haven't been watching enough Breaking Points, is his top issue. So that's what he decided to lead with. And we actually have a clip of that, I believe, that we can show you. I will just say, I am personally offended and stunned, genuinely, that the State of the Union about the United States of America began with a tirade about Ukraine and why we should fund a foreign war, which is, I personally think, is insane. And he tried to capture some Reagan-esque tear down that wall energy and contrast himself with Trump. That's right. We have a clip of that. So guys, if we can go ahead and play it, let's take a listen.
But now, assistance to Ukraine is being blocked by those who want to walk away from our world leadership. Wasn't long ago when a Republican president named Ronald Reagan thundered, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." Now my predecessor, a former Republican president, tells Putin, quote, "Do whatever the hell you want." That's a quote. A former president actually said that, bowing down to a Russian leader. I think it's outrageous, it's dangerous, and it's unacceptable.
Take a note of Joe Manchin and Mitt Romney standing up for that one. But again, I mean, I'm really wonder what you guys think. I understand that, yes, he has a 46% so approval rating on Ukraine. But I mean, starting off the State of the Union on why we must fund more aid to Ukraine just seems completely crazy to me.
Yeah.
The actual political hit that he had, IVF, which we will get to in a little bit, and on Roe versus Wade, did not come some 17 minutes, Krystal, into the speech. So we had Ukraine, and then we had January 6th. January 6th, look, I think it's annoying to litigate whatever. January 6th, 3.5 some years later, but politically it has played for him in his contrast with Trump. But he was really trying to stretch that into the top. And I thought, I mean, look, I'll just put it this way. It was a choice. It was a choice to start on Ukraine.
Normally, I feel like I'm pretty decent at taking my own personal view of situations out of my political horse race analysis. But I cannot abide this man at this point, given the facilitation of genocide that is going on as we speak, trying to speak in moral language about Ukraine. Like, I just can't. It's always been hypocritical.
Yeah,
We've always known that that was, you know, a farce and covering for a lot of other things that are going on. But given the, you know, full pass and the unconditional support and the, hey, Netanyahu, do whatever you want, that he's given, I cannot take that context away from that moment and him now trying to use this flowery pro-democracy bullshit language about Ukraine.
No, that's a good point, actually.
Yeah,
it's very discontinent with the policy.
Right, and the through line of the Biden administration has been not understanding what's going on with their base and with people who are just livid and shocked and appalled at what he's doing. And so for them, I don't think they understand how, when you start talking about, like, how dare you give a foreign leader unconditional support in its invasion of a helpless people? How, like, it's outrageous that so many people would hear that. Be like, well, yes, exactly. How dare you?
Yeah.
Like, Like why?
But then he doesn't mention it again for another hour.
He knows that Gaza Israel's terrible for him. That's why he has it at the very back end of the speech.
Right.
But he doesn't understand how it connects to that.
Well, and here's what's been interesting too is actually, you know, they have stopped using a lot of the language, like a lot of his, you know, State Department ghouls and whoever have stopped using a lot of that international rules-based order language. Because they know how blatantly hypocritical it is, right? I mean, how many clips have we played for members of Congress and whatever that's like, oh, you knew it was a war crime then, but now suddenly you need a lawyer, you need 15 independent experts in 13 years to figure out whether it's a freaking war crime when it's right there in front of your face every single day on TikTok. So there is some awareness in the administration that they have lost the ability to talk in those terms. So that was why I did find it sort of shocking that they started with that and tried to re-embrace those terms. I mean, remember, on his way, he had to go the long route around to avoid hundreds of protesters who were outside saying, your legacy is genocide. So that is this speech didn't just fall out of a coconut tree. There's a context for everything that came before.
Thank you for that.
This is an interesting point about even their media strategy. Because going into this, they were like, not leaking, but they were doing a lot of interviews, Jeff Zients and other people, about how this was going to be Biden's reset, that people have, quote, Trump amnesia. They don't remember how bad things were under Trump because Biden is still sort of purportedly digging out of the COVID hole. And so people just don't understand that Joe Biden has, you know, made this recovery go up, even though, of course, what they're not telling you is that up is relative to what it came down from when COVID happened. And what's interesting, again, is that this is not how it works anymore, that if you front load a speech and you're hoping to, you know, minimize the damage with voters who are upset about your policy in Israel, or you're hoping to minimize your damage with people who are upset with your policy at the border, because he also saved that way for last. As you mentioned, two things that he's pulling the worst on. It doesn't matter anymore because, to your point, Krystal, these clips, we play these clips. These clips go viral on TikTok.
We're about to go.
I was just going to say, the first half of his speech, for Joe Biden, he didn't seem like he was half asleep. So low bar, but he cleared it. Good for him on that. And then as it started to, you know, speech keeps going. It obviously is slipping a little bit, but I think some of his really sloppy exchanges, he made a personal decision. We were following the transcript of the speech. He made a personal decision to engage constantly with his hecklers. I don't know where you guys stand on this. I don't really have a problem with hecklers. I think it.
Oh, I enjoy it.
I like the British model.
Actually. Yeah.
Yes, I think actually a lot of them. I think the American.
Well, they both seem to like it.
Yes.
Yeah. That's clear. There's a feedback.
I mean,
Personally, my number one issue is decorum.
It's decorum.
That's what I vote on.
Look, my number one issue is
Who
dress
is the most
code,
decorous?
but not decorum.
He was so upset about decorum.
I am still upset
about the hats and the phones, but he loves the heckling.
Yeah.
Anyway, you're a hypocrite.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's not how this works anymore. All of those clips, you know, if he was hoping to save the border for last and stave off some problems with different voters, those clips are going to be viral as hell. The Gaza clips are going to be viral as hell. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah, that's right. In the internet era, everything is forever, whether you put something at the end or not. I mean, I still think it was obviously a political choice because 27 million people tuned in last year to this. It was the only political event to break the top 100 broadcasts. Very likely we'll get very similar ratings this time around, especially since it is an election year. You know, kind of going back to the political hits, quote unquote, you know, if we have to at least play the parts where I think that he definitely scored himself good points, is he was cogent, I would say, relatively, because he was sticking completely to the script. He didn't seem as off, and he wasn't coughing as much and losing his place and slurring his speech in the first 45 minutes. And he actually stuck it a little bit on Roe versus Wade and on IVF. So we do have, guys, if we can play the next clip here, where he directly addresses the Supreme Court on Roe versus Wade, which I thought was a smart strategy, given the way that his base feels about it and how it has animated so many voters. So, guys, why don't we go ahead and play that next one?
And with all due respect, justices, women are not without electoral power. Electoral or political power. You're about to realize just how much you're right about that.
And Ryan, he also
It wasn't delivered super cleanly, but you know, it was a good line.
All right, listen, as you said, what did you say in the beginning? We're grading on a curve, all right? We're grading on the silent generation curve. The one line I still can't believe from the speech is, "I was born during World War II." I'm like, you should probably just never remind people. We are literally. I am watching documentaries on Netflix of World War II in color, which is so amazing. So it's like, by the way, great documentary.
New one is so good.
It's awesome.
Yeah,
but when we have to colorize
really
footage from whenever the president of the United States was born today. A little bit nuts. But Ryan, we were talking, we were like, wow, that was his real hit, was on IVF and on Roe versus Wade. So again, saving it a little bit for the middle part of the speech, but calling directly, he's like, let's legalize IVF right now, and pointing to one of the women in the balcony.
You had a good idea of how Biden should have constructed his speech.
Right, it's half joke, but not really, because at this point, what do you have to lose? if I were his speechwriter, I would have given him a one-page speech, and it's IVF and Roe v. Wade. You get in there, you talk about those two things, and you're like, bye.
That's it.
And antitrust.
And then
Crystal made a
force
good
us
point.
to just
And
talk about how he did that.
Yes.
Not even antitrust, because once you start doing antitrust, then
You open a can of worms.
But a shrunken can of worms.
Those worms just keep coming. You do IVF and Roe.
Yeah.
And then you just lay it on the table that it's like, look, I am running for re-election. You think I'm way too old for this job. You think I'm doing a genocide, but the Republicans are crazy and they're going to ban
They're doing some
IVF
crazy shit.
and Trump.
Right.
And be like, look, that's it. Don't pretend like you're offering anything.
That's smart.
He didn't say Trump's name, by the way.
Well, I wanted to make the point, though, that especially the early part of the speech, and this was obviously a very intentional choice to try to make Biden look feisty and vigorous and all that. It was very aggressive.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, it was very, I'm coming after you. He didn't say Trump's name, but he said, the former president, my predecessor, et cetera, et cetera. It was, especially the first portion, was a campaign speech. And, so he hits him on Putin, and he's going to let Putin do whatever he wants. And then he hits him on January 6th, hits him on abortion, and you're the one that put these justices on the court. And, was really trying to take it to him and show that he still has the ability to credibly do that. So I think it was, very conscious to try to demonstrate that he had this fight and this level of aggressiveness that he's able to bring to the table, at least when it's scripted in a teleprompter and he's had a whole cocktail of whatever drugs they gave him before he stepped down there.
We already have Joe Scarborough weighing in. He says it's Biden's best speech, underestimated again. That is the direct audience, for what this was.
Yeah.
That's interesting because I've seen among the sort of commentariat reactions that are like this, and reactions that are like Amy Walter, who said, this feels more like something one would hear at the DNC than a State of the Union. He has already mentioned his quote-unquote predecessor in negative terms 2 times in the first few minutes. Danny Pletka, American Enterprise Institute.
She's voting on decorum. That was a problem for her.
A very neoconservative person says, literally has the Israeli and Ukraine flags in her bio. She said, what Biden doesn't realize is how much he now reflects Trump's legacy. Angry, hate-filled, partisan, without hope, just vengeance, and some random untruths about the economy. So I've seen a sort of bifurcated reaction from the chattering class.
I think that's so stupid. This is the State of the Union before the election. It is a campaign.
It's a campaign.
Speech. No shit. What are we all doing here? Do we remember Trump's speech?
I agree.
I remember Obama's as well. Obama's 2012 thing. That was a huge campaign kickoff.
The Supreme Court
went on
thing
tour
was
afterwards.
unusual. The Supreme Court thing was unusual.
But Roe is, the major deciding read. That's the main thing that's getting, even Dems to crawl out and actually vote for them.
The Amy Walters of the world are this centrist, DC class that used to kind of squat comfortably between the two parties, and now it's more difficult for them because the MAGA wing, they don't have a spot there, so it's hard for them to pretend
to both sides it.
That they can't both sides it as well. So they have to figure out ways to not look like they're Democrats, because they have just become Democrats, whether they want to admit it or not. So one way to say, well, I'm not a Democrat, this guy, he's the State of the Union.
So political.
Yeah, it's he's the president. He's the top political figure in the country. He's running for re-election. He'd be an idiot not to do that. I mean, this always gets back to the strategy,
He was very shouty, though.
Look, he was shouty. I mean, look, that's what it takes for him to be able to speak clearly. So,
but that's very intentional. Listen, with the floor, the bar is as low as it could possibly be. Okay, but the whole thing, I'm sure they coached him up be loud, be energetic. And so that's why he comes out there and he's screaming at us.
But don't riff too much.
Yeah, well, that part wandered off the rails at the end. But I mean, in a way, too, the fact that you bury your toughest issues at the end when the meds are wearing off and you're starting to go awry is not actually a great strategy. But since we're talking about decorum, it's as good of a time as any to show this little Marjorie Taylor Greene Joe Biden interaction. This is as he's walking in, he's doing the grip and grin with all the gathered members or whatever. Marjorie's there. She's in her red MAGA hat, and she has the, what is Laken Riley?
Laken
is that her
Riley,
name?
that's right.
Pin that she's trying to put in his face. And we've got a reaction from the president that caught a lot of people's attention. Let's take a look at that.
Look over here.
So that
Yes.
face is what everybody's
Well,
talking about.
Krystal, I guess we don't have the clip of this, but what it was, and there was a noteworthy part where he held it up, and this is what we referenced in the beginning, and because she was shouting his name, she was interrupting him whenever he was calling for the passage of the bipartisan border bill, and he was like, say her name, and he actually took out the pin. He said, yes, it's Laken Riley. As you said, he said, yes, she was killed by an illegal, where I did see some gasps. I mean, even me, I was like, wow, I can't believe a Democratic president just said that.
Yeah.
And it has, what did you say?
Well,
It hasn't been canon, I think,
so,
in the lexicon for quite a
we
long
do
time.
actually have a portion
okay.
of
I
that, but
apologize.
the internet was reacting to that face.
Okay,
So that's why we wanted to show
Got
the
it, that's
face.
right.
That was
It was funny.
There's a lot of internet reaction to that, but we do have a portion of the immigration ad lib that we can show you guys. This is D4 control room. If you could run that.
Lincoln Riley, an innocent young woman who was killed by an illegal. That's right. But how many of the thousands of people being killed by illegal?
Wow. Yeah, I mean, again,
it went
it's
on
genuinely crazy.
Yeah, and it went on from there uncomfortably, but
Yeah, I mean, it was the reason why I was uncomfortable, as Emily noted, is he didn't know the name properly,
had
and
it
then
in
he was
front
like
of him.
stumbling kind of through it, didn't know what he was doing. I mean,
It
electorally,
was in front
it's
of him
like,
on the pen.
And I know
Yeah.
the point he is trying to make there, which is that the native-born population has a higher crime rate than the
yes.
We do-
immigrant
we do crimes,
population. Yeah. So, but then when you're in the position of being like, yeah, well, how many people do regular Americans
like,
murder? It's like,
what?
well, that wasn't made in
Yeah,
really
it's
the
like-
most artful way possible. And that's when I started,
was-
getting nervous. And then he's like, this killed by an illegal. And
Trump, you think we're so innocent?
But
oh yeah, wait, but he was
That was
right though.
actually a
No,
great
but Trump was
moment.
right. Yeah, come on, yeah, like.
They're both right.
Yeah.
that is going to be mega viral, though,
Yeah, I
and
agree
undermine
with you,
any
yes.
attempt that his
Yeah.
administration made. And it's because he went off script. He didn't have to go off
But
script.
Emily, we know that. I mean, those attempts are already
Of course.
done.
Of
And
course.
the other thing that happened there is James Lankford, senator, who
Yes.
worked on that bipartisan bill, which was, legitimately very hard line, in which Trump came out and was like, no, I don't want this passed because I want to use this as an issue in the election. Lankford was the sort of lead Republican negotiator on that. And so when Biden is there saying, this is the toughest border security bill that any president has ever, tried to push through, Lankford actually mouths, that's true, as his Republican colleagues are booing and, no, that's a lie, Marjorie Taylor Greene doing her thing and whatever.
I think
So-
it's a big hope from Langford.
I personally think it's cool. If people want, we did an hour and a half long debate,
Yeah, you
Krystal and
did
I,
a
about
great-
this
that was-
bill.
that was
People
great.
could go watch
But
it for
can you just-
themselves.
I mean-
It's also relative. What is a bill that has been tougher? That
Well, okay.
the
What
president
I
has
would come back to is really this: is on the politics of it. I've always agreed with Krystal. Is if you care about the border, I care about the border. Emily, you do too. It's one of those things where it's like, yeah, we don't trust you, Biden. Period. End of story. Like even with all this other shenanigans, because of the people who work for you and all the other things that have happened in the last interim 3 years. You actually, I think at this point, if you're a border voter, like you're just a Republican, 100%. Like you're going to vote for him, or you're going to vote for Trump, or you're just not going to vote for Biden on this issue. Period. Now, can he move some like independent vote or anything on this? I genuinely don't think so. I think his best
So
possible
you wouldn't
effort.
say that there was another bill that was tougher. You're just saying, I don't trust Biden to implement
Well, okay,
a tough
but
bill.
this is what I'm saying about the bill. Like what we've had legislation introduced in 2017 that was much tougher under Trump. There was
HR2
one that
is what
HR2 is what the
Republicans wanted, yeah.
Republicans have
Yeah, it
passed.
didn't
and-
pass.
No, no,
it
it did pass the House of Representatives.
Right, but
so-
it wasn't
Right.
made into law.
Right,
I mean,
well,
listen,
this one didn't
personally,
pass either, so it
I'm
doesn't matter,
delighted
right?
that it was blocked.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm just saying,
But
like,
the- but
you
the
can't say
point
it's the
is-
toughest
but
one
Saagar, the
because
point-
there's
it's
a
the
billion
toughest
other
that could
bills
have
out there.
passed.
The point is,
Well, okay,
the point
theoretically,
is- I
don't
HR2
think
can
it-
pass
but think
too.
about it. But
Like,
think about
yeah.
this. There's no way in hell Democrats would vote for this shit under Trump.
Sure.
Not a fucking
Oh,
chance.
well,
Not a chance that they would have backed this bill with no path, nothing even for DACA, for the
Well,
Dreamers.
what about the next?
None of that.
Under the next Trump, I'm not. Oh, maybe. Look,
But I
maybe you're
think
right.
so.
I don't know.
I mean,
I think
so
the
what
politics.
so that's why-
Would have under Bush, the Democratic
Yeah.
Party, the New York Times had an amazing poll on this, how Democrats have moved way more than Republicans in the last, like, just the average voter in the
immigration
last, like,
especially.
20, 30
Yes.
years. Just on
Yeah,
immigration
yeah.
is what I'm talking about.
Right.
And I think that's what's, for Republicans, that's what to me was interesting about Biden actually being willing to take the pin for Marjorie Taylor Greene and then go back and forth. I just saw it as so
But you
emblematic.
guys are also acting like this is some like open border stuff.
No, we're not saying that.
The most
Yeah.
honest like positioning
Well,
that you get from him when he blurts out something like an illegal killed her. I mean, this is who he's been throughout
that's
his
what I think is
career.
interesting.
Yeah.
That's what I
He's
think
not
is
some
interesting.
lib on this issue.
But that's like the whiplash that people get with like Democrats. Like genuinely like, disaffected people will look at this, or people who care about the border and they don't feel like Democrats have dedicated enough time to it and haven't been willing to take tough steps to it. That's why I thought the moment was so emblematic. Like Biden took the pin from Marjorie Taylor Greene. He tried to interact with her. He thought he was interacting with her in good faith, which is in and of itself a weird thing
Well,
to think.
I think he was trying to flip it, is what I think he was trying. He was trying to get the political one-ups.
But it's sort of all of it in a nutshell, that Biden wants to try to please these two unpleasable blocs.
Yeah,
and he thinks
I
he's the
agree with
only
you.
one who can do it. I alone can
Just
fix it.
think about, okay, so the two areas where Biden has the worst approval rating right now,
Immigration in Gaza.
immigration and Gaza.
Right.
And in order to try to appease a group of people who, you're right, are Republicans and are not voting for him.
No, it's not going to happen.
People
Right.
who, that the border and the quote unquote immigration crisis is their number one issue. They're not voting for him. He is willing to abandon everything he said on the campaign trail and literally reach out his hand and say, Donald Trump, work with me on this issue. On Gaza, he's willing to pretend like he cares and do literally nothing to change the policy because it's the pressure from the left. I mean, it's so illustrative of the contempt with which the Democratic Party holds anything that they see as coming from the left. They just hold it in complete and utter contempt.
Yeah, I agree.
And they delight in screwing up. It's the total opposite. On the Republican Party side, I think they go to great lengths to try to please and cater to their base.
But the
with-
Republican base would say the Langford negotiations was the
Yeah,
biggest middle
exactly.
finger they ever got from
But
the
they
political
didn't. But then
establishment.
they backed away from it when they got pressure from the base. They backed
no, I
away when
agree.
Trump
Oh, I
said, "Hey,
100%
you need
agree.
to."
Yeah,
And here's
100%.
the thing: is I just don't think you can deny. I am delighted that they killed this bill. Now I don't think anything's going to happen. The things that are more likely to happen is Trump gets in again. Whatever he does through executive orders, which is quite significant,
Yes.
what he could do. That's what's likely to happen. But in terms of, actual legislation passing, no, they're not going to get another bite at this apple. It's purely political.
Right, because
Now-
why would Democrats help him? Because at that point, it's Trump's problem.
Exactly.
The same
That's
same
exactly
reason
right.
that Republicans were like, sorry, Biden, this is your problem.
And at the same time, Democrats have completely abandoned any sort of moral high ground that they had on this issue, and they've just accepted the Republican argument, which is why I think it's both a moral and political disaster.
I will stick with what you said. Immigration debates and all that aside, I think that a point that you're making is important about political constituencies' ability to exercise power. And the border, because it's interesting, because if you look in the past, the Republican base wanted immigration restriction for 70 years or whatever, for as long as the modern coalition has existed. Screwed, gang of eight, over and over again. They were finally able to extract actually some blood on Eric Cantor. And then with the Freedom Caucus from there, plus the rise of Trump, you have Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, Jeb Bush, and all these other people who disavow their previous immigration policies and basically meet Trump where he is. And then you get to the status quo of today where the base is able to kill a border bill. The problem, and I mean, there's a myriad of reasons why it's maybe what this is. I actually want to know what you guys think. Is for some reason we haven't seen the ability for the left to exercise that same level of political power until, look, maybe today is the breaking point, right? Because we have uncommitted that actually is a genuine political force. And I mean, I think that the calculus, and this is where I probably defend the two of you and have stuck up for you also for when my centrist Biden fans get very upset at the things that you say is they're like, oh,
You could just say
but
it's Marshall.
Trump would, yeah, that's right, yeah. It's not just Marshall. Is they're like, yeah, but Trump would be so much worse. I'm like, yeah, but they're trying to extract a pound of flesh to show that they can. And it's like that just hasn't really happened a lot with the political left in this country.
There is
and that's the
a
issue.
knee-jerk assumption that really started with Bill Clinton.
Yeah, right.
That the way to win is to kick the left and posture like to adopt a lot of the Republican position, like on welfare and on NAFTA and all kinds of other things.
Biden
Tax
is
cuts.
the symbol. He is the poster candidate.
That is his ideological
Very
bearing.
true. Yes.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I keep Mark Lamont Hill said this with regards to Israel and how they have been so clueless about what a problem this is for them electorally, which has been obvious from the very beginning. But if you've been in Washington 50 years, in that 50 years, it has never been a political problem to be too pro-Israel. And so him and his little bubble of people who have similar 50-year careers in Washington, D.C. and all of these things baked in, they're just not able to adjust to any other assumption. They're not able to realize that there are certain areas where actually the left-wing position is incredibly popular and you would benefit from adopting that position. Now, I do want to give some credit to the economic portion of this speech, which I thought was well-crafted. I thought it was good. I mean, it was very made in America. It was very sort of economic nationalist in a way that I think lands in a real populist way.
Yeah.
He spent a lot of time talking about specific proposals to help make housing more affordable, both for homeowners, aspiring homeowners, and renters. He talked about using antitrust to go after these big landlord companies that are basically rigging the markets and use it. He didn't get into the whole algorithm situation, but we actually covered it on the show this week. But using the antitrust division to try to crack down on price fixing in the rental market, which is increasingly a huge issue. I thought there were some genuinely good things there. It's hard for me, though, it's just hard for me to really give him credit on any of this when Gaza and what's happening there just looms so large over all of it.
What do you think, Ryan, about this pound of flesh, the ability for the left to exercise power?
Well, I think fundamentally one problem is that the hard right is so much bigger in the United States than the hard left, or whatever you want to call them. Just the structural and the material conditions that exist here in the United States do not set up a situation where you're going to have a big left. You had one in the New Deal because you just came out of a Great Depression and the U.S. was not yet the global empire riding astride across the whole planet. And the success of the left out of the 30s and 40s was their own undoing. And so they just don't have the numbers. You can do some tactical things here or there, but you're gonna be stuck.
Oh, we'll see.
But yet, despite that, the great tragedy of this genocide, well, not the great tragedy, it's many layers down, but one of the tragedies of the genocide that Biden is overseeing is that it has just stained his entire legacy of economic populism, which, as Kyle was saying, before the speech, he would be defending, I would be defending. There's so much that you can say about it. The fact that prices jumped and are still high, and rent is still a huge problem, is itself kind of a cloud over everything else that he's done. But everything else he's done is not nothing. Low unemployment rate, labor militancy, cash in people's pockets. The economy overall in the last 3 years, a result of the kinds of things that the left has been pushing for years, is headed in the right direction, but you're not going to find anybody who's willing to celebrate it.
Yeah, I mean, how much would I have in another timeline without Gaza been talking about Sean Fain being there?
Yeah, you're
and
right. Yeah.
the union wins and the pro-act getting a call out and all of that. But it's just it is an incredible tragedy because before Gaza, I was out there saying, listen, it's not just a lesser of two evils vote. If you look just at antitrust and you look just at labor,
and just at wages, wages now are growing faster than prices, and they have been for several years.
Care about
and especially at the lower end.
If you care about checking corporate power, the people he put in place in key, positions have done a great job, and they've been aggressive, and it's been groundbreaking, and it's been a real break from the Clinton-Obama Democratic Party, and obviously wildly better than, Trump had a bunch of union busters in at the NLRB, and the antitrust was not doing anything different than what was being done before. So those pieces are undoubtedly better under Biden. You know, I don't think that they've done a great job selling it or whatever. It's long term, while you have a lot of pain for people that is very present and very real right now. And on the economic front, you know, I've long said that dropping the economic pieces of Build Back Better and allowing all the COVID social safety net stuff to expire, I mean, that was a huge moral disaster. It was a huge political disaster. And it's a big and I think undersold part of why his economic approval ratings are so incredibly low. I just want to mention Jeff Stein flagged some of the economic policy that was in the State of the Union, highlighting manufacturing, auto construction boom, which is real, reducing drug costs by taking on big pharma. I mean, that was kind of like they did a little bit there.
It's a kind of fake, but whatever.
2 million new affordable homes, $5,000 per year for first-time home buyers, universal preschool, Pell Grants, cutting student debt, expanding ACA subsidies. So, I mean, some of those things are very neo-lib, but it is this kind of like populist economic focus.
Chips
that
Act, you talked about.
Yeah, that would have given people something to focus on, hold on to, highlight, if not overshadowed by
And
the
yet,
wars.
he started in Ukraine. I mean, to your point, he started in Ukraine.
I can't get
And
over
when we were listening to him talk about housing, I was thinking to myself, like, this, if you had written this for the beginning, if you had like really written this as an introductory part of your speech, I mean,
But,
I get it. He
I
has
kind
this-
of doubt myself on this now, though, Emily, because I would have said the same thing, but that message of just like January 6th and MAGA's a bunch of crazy weirdos, it worked.
No,
It's worked for him.
I'm with
An
Krystal.
abortion.
This is
Yeah,
here's the thing.
exactly.
The people don't trust him on the economy. They're not going to take credit for it. They haven't done enough of the short-term stuff. They don't trust him on that.
That's
They're
a
not willing to give you long-term, check
age-
boxes when you're getting screwed.
Do you think that
age is huge?
I think age hangs over the economy.
Age hangs
too.
over
Absolutely.
everything.
Because it's like, all right,
Yeah.
okay, I do like that wages are
Right.
growing faster than inflation, et cetera. But like, I don't trust this guy over the next 4 or 5 years to like deliver more.
And I've talked about this before. Kennedy, I mean, he had, in terms of like the inexorables, like he had the vigor. Like that was the whole thing. Like that was why
But he was
it was
also
like
on a
new
cocktail of drugs.
Yeah, that's right. But nobody knew it, okay? Like people didn't
No.
know he basically had late-stage Parkinson's and would have died if he had been
Make
reelected.
presidents look sober again.
So I do have to say this. We are going to be transitioning soon. I've flagged this before to our premium-only live stream. It will be available to premium members. You have a few more minutes if you want to sign up at breakingpoints.com. We'll be doing a live Q&A, which is on a separate live stream that we've emailed to our premium subscribers. If you want to be able to get access to that, guys, can we put the graphic, please, up on the screen? Breakingpoints.com. Very generous discount going on right now, State of the Union, 25% off there. So take advantage of that. We've got links everywhere, and you can go and visit yourself. So maybe last thoughts, I guess,
You've been
from
saving any
everybody?
gems for later?
Some gems? Well, look,
for the premium
we'll see.
subs,
I mean, it's up to them. It
We
depends
should-
on what they ask.
we should
Yeah.
mention that Trump has been responding on Truth Social.
Oh, that's right.
Presumptive nominee as of this week,
Okay.
and he has been slamming Biden for coughing the entire.
I mean, it was weird. Like,
yeah. So I'm a bit
Yeah.
like Trump, the sort of master of the aesthetic and
Oh,
the
yes,
TV.
yes, yes.
That's
like,
what he
this
right.
honed in
That's
on.
good.
It's interesting.
Joe,
yeah.
Joe Coffin.
Joe Coffin. Oh,
And that works on
liking it. Yeah,
multiple
COFFIN. Coffin Joe. Coffin Joe. I like
That's not
him.
bad,
I like
Ryan.
it.
That's
All
not
right.
bad.
I might tweet that out. I might try and
just
socialize
got here
that.
on Mar-a-Lago.
I may try and socialize that. So
Well, I saw he was trying to take Hillary's the crooked Hillary thing and give that to Joe. And I was like, you really recycling nicknames now? Come on.
that only works for Hunter. It doesn't work
Right,
for.
and you tried
it
that.
doesn't work as well. So okay, last thoughts from everybody. Ryan, what do you got?
No, that's all I got.
All right, that's it. That's it. Come on,
Joe.
man. Yeah, Coffin Joe.
Well, it wasn't a joke. It was a serious advice. It
Oh,
was
yeah.
insulting advice.
My last thought here is, we had that moment with the report that came out that was talking about elderly gentleman, poor memory,
Yes.
when there was this moment of panic. And Ezra Klein is writing a piece in the New York Times, and Nate Silver is echoing it, and you're, getting kind of a little bit of a DC freakout going, getting conspiracy theories about, maybe they're getting ready to slide Kamala into his place or something like that. All of those murmurings, I think he did enough in this speech that
I agree with you.
it's over.
Unfortunately.
I mean, listen, again, we've talked a million times, the bar is really low. But I'm sure on CNN, they're over there selling him as the greatest orator of our time right
Jim
now.
Messina said all questions are answered. Like
Yes.
he's
Yes.
good.
There you
Yes.
go.
If I'd have gotten a question in, it would have been answered.
Yeah, yes, Joe.
I didn't get it.
I completely agree with you, Krystal. This is it. The Biden age discourse, they have enough. my prediction that I'll try and hear is that they are going to try and do as few debates with Trump as possible. We would be lucky if we get one. And I think this is exactly why. He can have one shot, he can have one thing where he can read off, he can have the note cards prepared, but 3 is just not going to cut it. Trump, smart in trying to pressure him and highlight that, but the proof from this speech is the Super Bowl strategy was correct. Don't put him on the Super Bowl. You play him once, you get him pretty good, 30 minutes or so, and that's it. And you cut his ass off. Don't let him go out there.
It doesn't work because people aren't stupid.
It doesn't work because people aren't stupid, but they're gonna look. They work before. You play the MAGA hits.
On CNN
you play this. You play the Roe versus Wade hits, and you just hope and pray in November. That's your only possible strategy in dragging you through election. So that's my prediction and my kind of closing thought on this. Emily,
my closing thought is I think there were some moments that were genuinely really. I don't want to say unprecedented because nothing is ever unprecedented in the United States Congress, but there were moments that were unusual to anyone who's watched a State of the Union on television, which I think started with Harry Truman. The sort of break in decorum, which again, I don't have a problem with, but that was Biden going back and forth. I think all of that is going to overshadow the planned scripted rhetoric that came out of the White House that had actually some real, just from the perspective of political strategy, some real highlights. They did a good job with some of these lines. They did a good job talking about some things. But I think because of those places he went off script, he tried to interact with Marjorie Taylor Greene. He tried to go back and forth, chop it up with people who were shouting in the audience. And in the course of that, he had some gaffes. He was coughing a lot. He said something about Moscow at one point, getting drugs from Moscow. I think honestly, all of that is because we live in the viral clips economy, going to overshadow their best efforts not to have that happen, and because he decided to go off script.
Well, for my final thought, I'll tell my old man story. To your point, back in 2010, I was in the gallery when Joe Wilson yells, "You lie."
Yeah.
I had just written a profile of Joe Wilson for Politico like a couple months earlier.
That's genius.
You looked like
the traffic on that must have been
and not just that, when he yelled, he's a total backbench nobody.
Right.
Yes.
And the whole press corps is like, who just yelled? Who just yelled? And I'm like, I like, because then you couldn't bring your devices in. I'm like, that was Joe Wilson that just yelled.
Ryan,
So like,
Ryan,
and everyone in the gallery is like, who is Joe Wilson?
Dude,
who is Joe Wilson? I'm like, read my
It's
profile.
like,
Why did you profile
real.
him?
He's real.
Why did I profile him? I mean, he had a whole bunch of kids serving in Iraq.
Okay.
I don't know. Go Google Joe Wilson.
We'll look it up.
We'll look it up.
A little homework
It
for
was in
everybody.
Politico. I used to do feature profiles.
All right. So here's what I'm being told. Premium guys, premium stream. There's a separate stream for premium subscribers. If you signed up in the interim, go and check. We have emails and all of that. You'll have a link. We're going to stop for maybe 2 minutes or so. Everyone will take a drink of water. Premium chat, what I'm going to ask is that you guys start putting your questions into the box so that we can have some immediately whenever we start going. But to the public, thank you guys so much for watching. We really appreciate it. I think we hit 20,000 or so at the top here, so that was pretty cool.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
That's a lot of public.
That was a lot. Yeah, I think that might be a record for our State of the Union stream. So
Nice.
3 years here, Krystal, has been great. It's kind of amazing. We started over there on our piddly little set. Now we're here. Look at us. Now we got counterpoint.
beautiful
So
set.
you guys have done an amazing job. The premium subscribers, you guys helped us build all of this. So just thank you. BreakingPoints.com if you can help us out. Otherwise, premiums, we will see you all. Just give us a few minutes. We'll take a drink of water and we'll do our Q&A live in the chat. So there we go.